Full of Beans, Henry Ford Grows a Car by Peggy Thomas, illustrated by Edwin Fotheringham. We would like to thank Calkins Creek for allowing us to read this to you virtually today. Henry Ford made cars, millions of cars, but this story isn't about cars. Well, maybe just one. It's about one car and a lot of beans. Henry had a mind for machines and was driven to improve the world around him. When he was young, his mother said, "Do something useful," and encouraged him to make life for others a little smoother, a little easier, and a little happier. Sometimes he was successful. He built a smoother ride in his affordable Model T, sort of. He sped up factories with the moving assembly line and made the workers happier with a $5 a day wage. Sometimes he was not. When he experimented with shrink-proof wool, all he got was a drawer full of tiny socks. But one concern needled him his whole life: farming. Farming was hard work. No one knew that better than Henry. Growing up on a Michigan farm, he dreaded the long hours behind a horse and plow. From the time I left that front gate as a boy, my only interest in a farm has been to lighten its labors. If I can do that, I shall have rendered a real service to humanity. As a teenager, he hammered together a crude tractor, but it couldn't haul a hayseed. As a successful car manufacturer, Henry still experimented with building tractors from leftover car parts. One of these tractors, the Fordson, sold for more than 50 years. But heavy hauling and long hours of plowing was only part of the problem farmers faced. In 1929, the entire country suffered in the Great Depression. The stock market crashed, businesses failed, people couldn't find jobs. Some farmers lost their land. Others left crops rotting in the field because they couldn't afford to harvest. Henry remembered his mother's words, "Do something useful." What if farmers had a new market for their produce? They could earn more money, and their crops wouldn't go to waste. Henry absolutely hated waste. Industry owes it to society to conserve material in every possible way. Henry recycled everything. The Ford factory in Dearborn, Michigan reused rags, boxes, and even sawdust. Every day, garbage trucks dumped 7 tons of trash at the factory, where it was processed and turned into useful products: fuels for cars, material to pave roads, fertilizer for plants, and charcoal briquettes for grilling hot dogs. What if he used farmers' crops the same way? Anything that can be grown for industry's raw materials will bring new revenue to agriculture. But first, Henry had to figure out which vegetables were suitable. On a patch of land that he called Greenfield Village, Henry built a laboratory. He hired a team of young men to study the chemicals in every grain, fruit, and vegetable. One of those men was Robert Boyer. While ratchets and widgets cranked and spun in Henry's brain, Robert thought about chemicals and atoms that could be pulled apart and mixed together. Soon, truckloads of vegetables tumbled in a heap outside the lab. Carrots one week, corn stalks the next, turnips, tomatoes, and wheat. Robert ground, whirled, boiled, and stirred. Henry rocked or did chin-ups on a beam. That was his way of thinking. And after 2 years, they discovered the perfect crop for the factory. The soybean. People in China had grown and eaten soybeans for centuries, but in the United States, the soybean was cow feed. To Henry, it was a wonder crop. Soybeans were easy to grow, enriched the soil, and were bursting with oil and protein. Henry imagined farmers all across the country growing soybeans for food and for industry. But exactly what could they make from the oil and protein of this little legume? To work that out, Henry needed lots and lots of soybeans. In the spring of 1932, a fleet of 4 tractors planted 300 different kinds of soybeans across 8,000 acres. Soon, the city of Dearborn sat in the sea of soybeans. In the fall, Robert ground, whirled, boiled, and stirred. Henry continued to think. Mixing soybean oil with coloring and other ingredients created a paint that was glossier, less expensive, and dried to a harder finish than any other coatings did. From a hospital bed where he was recovering from surgery, Henry announced that every Ford car would wear soybean paint. That came as a surprise to Robert, who had to hurry to perfect the paint for production. Next, Henry's team mixed soy protein with a chemical resin to make a hard plastic. Soon cars rolled off the assembly line gleaming with soybean plastic horn buttons, gear shift knobs, light switches, and distributor caps. The more cars Henry built, the more soybeans he needed. Henry kept a network of 700 Michigan farmers busy growing more than 22,000 acres of soybeans. Some people thought Henry was full of beans, and he was. He ate beans. One of his favorite snacks was the Model T, a soybean cracker cut from the dough using a real Model T hubcap. Henry sold soy flour to factory workers and served soy ice cream in the lunchroom. He wore beans. Robert spun soy protein into thread, woven into a fabric. It was nearly as strong as wool. Henry's tailor stitched him a soybean suit, and the men from the lab gave him a soybean silk tie. And Henry wanted to drive beans. Every Ford car already contained a bushel of soybeans from the gear shift knob to the paint. But Henry wanted the cars even beanier. He imagined an automobile as revolutionary as his Model T, a whole car made out of soybean plastic, so lightweight it would use less gas than any other car on the road. Making small plastic parts was easy, but molding a giant plastic panel was not. When the first panel popped out of the mold, Henry grabbed an axe. Aiming the blunt end, he swung. Thwack! Crack! He punched a hole clear through. To test the strength of the next panel, Henry jumped up and down on it. If that was steel, he said, it would have caved in. Henry attached a plastic trunk lid to his own car. With a crowd of people watching, Henry opened the trunk and pulled out his axe. He swung as hard as his wiry frame would allow, and this time the axe bounced off the plastic and over his shoulder. It was time to assemble the car. Henry's team affixed the plastic panels onto a tubular steel frame, 2 fenders in the front, 2 in the rear, a front grille, the engine hood, the doors, and a roof. 14 plastic panels in all. No one had seen anything like it. The men in the Ford plant called it a monstrosity, just an old man's hobby. But Henry knew it was much more than that. It wasn't just a car. It was the perfect symbol for how farms could fuel factories. On August 13th of 1941, everyone gathered for the Dearborn Day festivities. Dressed in his soybean suit, Henry rode to the fairgrounds in his sleek new automobile, the color of a wax bean. Some folks joked that the car ran on salad dressing other than gas. Others saw Henry's revolutionary vision. "Please hurry it," one reporter wrote. "Mr. Ford, hurry, hurry." But 4 months later, no one was talking about Henry's amazing soybean plastic car. On December 7, the Japanese Navy attacked Pearl Harbor, and America was at war. The Ford Motor Company stopped making cars and began making bomber planes. The soybean plastic car rolled into storage. Nobody knows for sure, but its steel frame may have been recycled for the war effort. The plastic panels disappeared. It would be one of Henry's last innovations. He died on April the 7th, 1947. Henry will always be remembered for making cars, millions of cars. But only one proved that Henry was not full of beans. Today, soybean farmers continue to fuel factories, growing furniture and flooring, dog biscuits and bread, candy, crayons, and cars. The end. Stay tuned for a fun message from Miss Amanda for Ag Week. National Ag Day proudly celebrates the wholesome contributions of our country's farms and farm families every March. American agriculture is the foundation of our country. It's the backbone of a healthy and prosperous nation, made possible by the hard work of the American farms and farm families. American agriculture brings everyone to the table. The Agriculture Council of America and our industry partners invite you to celebrate National Ag Day on March 23rd. You can find more ideas for planning your own Ag Day events on the National Ag Day website, agday.org. I invite you to join us as we recognize and celebrate the contributions of America's farmers, growers, and ranchers. So what is Ag Day? It's a day to recognize and celebrate the abundance that is provided by agriculture. Every year, producers, agricultural associations, corporations and universities, government agencies, and countless others across America, they join together to recognize the contributions of agriculture. Ag Day is celebrated this week, March 23rd, and it falls during National Ag Week. Ag Day is about recognizing and celebrating the contribution of agriculture in our everyday lives. The National Ag Day program encourages every American to understand how food and fiber products are produced, to value the essential role of agriculture in maintaining a strong economy, to appreciate the role that agriculture plays in providing safe, abundant, and affordable products. We celebrate agriculture because it's almost everything we eat, everything we use and wear on a daily basis. But too few people truly understand this contribution. This is particularly the case in our schools, when students may only be exposed to agriculture if they enroll in related vocational training. Each American farmer feeds more than 165 people, a dramatic increase from 25 people in the 1960s. Quite simply, American agriculture is doing more and doing better. As the world population soars, there is an even greater demand for the food and the fiber that is produced in the United States. We would like to thank Kentucky Farm Bureau for partnering with us this week for Ag Week. Todd White and his team have provided a little bag for the kids to come by the library to pick up so that they can participate this week for Ag Week. The bag includes a coloring book, pencils and crayons, and an Ag Day poster. It's very simple. Get involved. Your participation in Ag Day is critical in helping us spread this positive message about agriculture. If you're interested in planning an event, download your planning guide today, and you can access that by going to agday.org. Thanks for coming and stopping by for this virtual program. We can't wait to see you and your children to pick up your Ag Day bag. Goodbye.